Have you ever seen someone so stubborn they could dare death itself? That was Brenda. Brenda was my roommate in university, and she was the most stubborn girl I had ever met. She was tall, pretty, and always the loudest in the room. But her weakness? She never listened to anyone. If you told her don't go, she would go. If you said don't touch, that was exactly what she wanted to touch. Everyone in our hostel knew her for her stubborn ways, and sometimes it was funny. One hot afternoon, a few of us passed the old graveyard behind the school. It was quiet, covered with weeds, the kind of place people avoided. Someone joked, "I dare anyone to enter." We laughed nervously. Before we could stop her, Brenda smirked, walked in boldly, and in front of all of us, she pulled the craziest stunt. She urinated on one of the old graves. We screamed and ran, but Brenda just laughed, shaking her head at her fear. To her, it was just another silly dare. But none of us knew that one foolish act had opened the door to something we could never control. That same night, Brenda began to change. She came back to the hostel as if nothing happened. She mocked us for being scared. "What can a dead man do to me?" she said, laughing. She ate dinner and went to bed like nothing was wrong. But around midnight, I heard her screaming. I jumped out of my bed and rushed to her side. Brenda was shaking, sweating, her eyes wide open, as if she was fighting something unseen. When she finally calmed down, she whispered that she had seen a shadow standing over her bed, with eyes like burning coal. The next morning, she brushed it off, saying it was just a dream, but her hands shook as she ate. Her boldness was fading. By evening, Brenda refused to stay alone in the room. She said the air felt heavy, and she kept looking over her shoulder as though someone was following her. That was the beginning of her torment. A few days later, the whispers began. At first, Brenda thought it was the girls in the hostel playing pranks on her, but the voice always came at night, when the hostel was quiet and everyone was asleep. She told me the whisper called her name slowly, Brienda. She would hear footsteps outside our room, but when she opened the door, there was no one. Some nights she would wake me, shivering, claiming the same shadow sat at the foot of her bed, asking her, "Why did you disrespect me?" By now, other students had noticed her strange behavior. She was no longer bold and loud. She jumped at every sound, refused to walk past the graveyard, and barely ate. People whispered behind her back, some mocking, others scared. I tried to comfort her, but truthfully, I was terrified too. The graveyard was no longer just a place of the dead. Something from there had followed Brenda home, and it was not letting her go. One evening, as we studied in our room, Brenda suddenly dropped her pen. Her eyes widened, fixed on the window. I followed her gaze but saw nothing. She clutched my arm and whispered, "It's watching me." From that day, Brenda refused to sit near the window, especially at night. She kept saying the shadow was outside, staring at her. She became restless, moving from one bed to another, sometimes sleeping in other people's rooms, but the shadow always found her. Her friends started avoiding her. Some even moved out of the hostel, afraid of what was happening. Rumors spread across campus that Brenda had offended a spirit. Lecturers began noticing her dullness in class. The once lively girl now looked pale, weak, and lost. I tried to encourage her, but deep inside, I knew the truth. Brenda had awakened something that wouldn't forgive her. Her laughter and pride had disappeared. All that was left was fear. The scariest night came when Brenda woke me with a scream that shook the whole hostel. I switched on the lights, and what I saw still haunts me. Brenda was pressed flat on her bed, her hands clawing the sheets as though invisible hands were holding her down. She struggled, gasping for air, tears running down her face. I tried to pull her up, but it felt as though something heavy was on top of her. She kept screaming, "Leave me alone! I am sorry!" Suddenly, she went still. breathing hard, eyes wide with terror. She said she felt cold hands around her neck, trying to choke her. That night, nobody in the hostel slept. Everyone gathered in the room, praying and crying. The stubborn girl who once laughed at danger was now begging for her life. And for the first time, I realized this was not just a bad dream. Something had truly followed Brenda, and it was hungry for revenge. The next morning, I took Brenda to the school clinic. The nurse checked her blood pressure and temperature. Everything was normal, yet she looked sick. The nurse asked if she had stress or trauma. Brenda kept quiet. She did not want to say what she did at the graveyard. When we returned to the hostel, I begged her to talk to someone older and wise. She sighed and agreed to see the campus chaplain. In his office, the chaplain listened carefully. He did not shout. He only asked one question that made Brenda's eyes fill with tears. Did you offend anyone who cannot speak for themselves? Brenda nodded slowly. He told her that disrespecting the dead is not a joke. He said guilt opens doors to fear, and fear invites darkness. He advised her to pray, apologize, and do an act of honor. That evening, Brenda whispered, "I was only trying to be bold." I held her hand. "Now, be bold enough to make it right." We decided to visit the graveyard in daylight. Brenda bought fresh flowers and a small white cloth. The chaplain told us to keep it simple. Go there, speak from the heart, apologize, and promise never to disrespect any grave again. We told two close friends to walk with us for safety. As we entered the graveyard, the wind felt colder than usual. Brenda walked slowly, and we found the grave she used. It was old, with a simple wooden cross. There was no clear name, only faint letters. Brenda knelt, placed the flowers, and said, "I am sorry. I was foolish. I did not think. Please forgive me." She covered the spot with a white cloth and cleaned around the area. For a moment, the place felt calm. But when we turned to leave, a deep groan echoed from the far corner, like a heavy door dragging on the ground. We all froze. Brenda grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" she asked. I nodded, afraid. Calm had come, but not peace. That night, Brenda slept in my bed. I thought the apology would end everything. But around 2 a.m., she woke me, trembling. "The voice is not one anymore," she whispered. "It is many." I listened. The hostel was silent, but Brenda said she heard a crowd, like a busy market, whispering in her ear. She closed her eyes and covered her ears, but the voices grew louder. She started to cry, saying they were asking questions. Why? Why? I held her and kept praying in my heart. Suddenly, she sat up straight and spoke in a tone that was not her own. "Who speaks for the poor?" Then she lay back, shivering. In the morning, we returned to the chaplain. He said sometimes an apology must be followed by restitution. If the grave is of a forgotten person, he said, maybe honor the forgotten. He asked Brenda to do charity on behalf of the poor soul, feed the hungry, pay hospital bills for someone in need, clean neglected graves. We began by cleaning the graveyard with permission from the gatekeeper. We cleared weeds, washed old headstones, and replaced broken candles. The gatekeeper, an elderly man, watched us quietly. After a while, he told us a story. Years ago, a young woman was buried in that field. She was poor, no family in town, and her grave marker was simple wood. People called her the unknown sister. The old man pointed to the area where Brenda had seen. Somewhere there, he said. Brenda's face fell. She whispered, "A poor soul." The words in our title were now real. She bought small wooden markers and wrote kind words. "Beloved, remembered, you are seen." We placed them gently. For the first time, Brenda did not look like the loud, stubborn girl. She looked like a person carrying lights. That night, she slept without screams. I thought we were finally free. But just before dawn, Brenda gasped and clutched her neck again. "It's not finished," she said. "Something is still angry." The next day, we returned to the grave. Brenda said she felt pulled to the ground. She knelt and carefully lifted a small patch of soil near the wooden cross. There, half buried, was a thin copper bracelet, old and dark, with tiny beads. Brenda held it with shaking hands. "Maybe it belonged to her," she said. We took it to the chaplain. He advised we clean it gently and return it with respect. He taught us a simple prayer. What was disrespected, we now honor. What was broken, we now mend. We went back, placed the bracelet in a small cloth pouch, and left it on the grave with fresh flowers and water. As we stood up, a breeze moved through the weeds, and for a moment, everything was still birds, leaves, even our breath. Brenda touched her chest and whispered, "I feel lighter." We walked away in silence, holding hope like a candle in the wind. For 2 days, Brenda laughed again. She ate and attended lectures. We thought the storm had passed, but on the third day, something strange happened in broad daylight. In the cafeteria, Brenda suddenly dropped her plates and stared at the door. No one was there. She said the shadow had moved from the night into the day. We rushed her outside. She sat under a tree, breathing fast. "It followed me," she said. But the voice is different now. Softer, not angry, just watching. I called the chaplain again. He said the last stage is often the hardest. Sometimes peace comes slowly, like morning light. He told Brenda to forgive herself, not just ask for forgiveness. That evening, Brenda wrote a long letter to the unknown sister. She promised to use her boldness for good, not foolishness. She placed the letter at the grave the next morning. As we walked back, she smiled, but her eyes were wet. Night fell heavy. I woke to the sound of glass breaking. Brenda had smashed our mirror. She said she saw a face that was not hers. Sad eyes, dusty cheeks, and a small scar above the lip. "She was looking at me from the mirror," Brenda cried. "She's not angry. She's lonely." We called our friends, and they gathered in our room. We spoke softly, we prayed, and we played gentle music. Brenda lay on the bed, quiet at last. Then she whispered, "I know what to do." She wanted to find the woman's real name. The next morning, we visited the town registry with the chaplain's letter of introduction. We searched records of unclaimed bodies from years ago. After hours, we found an entry. A young woman, about 22, street trader, no family listed. A note said she wore a copper bracelet. Her name, Mira. Brenda pressed her palm to the page and cried. We returned to the graveyard with a small marble tile we bought with savings. On it, we wrote, "Mira, daughter, sister, remembered." We placed it carefully near the wooden cross. We lit a white candle and placed a bowl of clean water beside it, a simple sign of honor. Brenda spoke to Mira like a sister. "I was foolish. I used your resting place for pride. I see you now. We all do." The wind moved gently, and the candle did not flicker. The old gatekeeper watched from a distance and nodded with approval. That night, Brenda slept peacefully. In the morning, she looked different, quiet, soft, and grateful. She wore a simple dress and tied her hair back. When we walked past the graveyard on our way to class, she stopped, bowed her head, and whispered, "Thank you." But destiny was not finished. As we stepped out, a young woman approached us. She had the same small scar above the lip. She said, "Are you the girls who clean the graves?" The young woman introduced herself as Lillian. She said her family once lived in this town but moved away after hard times. Her elder sister, Mira, disappeared years ago. They searched, but there was no news. She returned to the town recently and heard people talk about girls who were cleaning graves and placing new markers with kind words. She followed the rumor to find us. We took her to the marker we made for Mira. When Lillian saw the tile with Mira's name, she fell to her knees and sobbed. She touched the soil and whispered, "Sister, I found you." We all cried quietly with her. She showed us a photo, a smiling girl with the same scar and a copper bracelet. Brenda placed the bracelet we found into Lillian's hand. "This belongs to your family," she said. Lillian hugged her and whispered, "Thank you for bringing my sister back to me in this way." We thought everything was finished, but pain sometimes checks if you truly changed. That night, Brenda woke up gasping again. She said the cold hands were back. I jumped up, angry at the darkness. "We have honored her. Leave us alone," I shouted into the air. Brenda sat up and surprised me. "No," she said calmly. "This is the last test. I will not fear." She closed her eyes and spoke softly. "Mira, I am sorry. I have honored you. Your sister knows your resting place now. Please rest in peace and let me live in peace." The room grew still. The air felt warm again. Brenda's breathing slowed and she lay back down. She slept until morning without a sound. When she woke up, she looked like herself again, but gentler, wiser. The fight was over, not because we shouted, but because we changed. Brenda asked for permission to speak briefly at the student fellowship. She stood in front of everyone, not loud, not proud, just honest. She told the story, leaving out the scary details, but sharing the truth. I disrespected a grave and paid the price. I learned to honor the dead, to say sorry, and to fix what I broke. Some students laughed at first, but they stopped when they saw tears in Brenda's eyes. She encouraged everyone to stop mocking, stop daring foolishness, and start living with respect. After the meeting, several students approached us. One boy said he used to kick headstones as a joke. He promised to stop. A girl said she would help clean the graveyard monthly. Brenda and I started a small group called Hands of Honor. We cleaned, planted flowers, and wrote encouraging words on simple markers. The gatekeeper called us the daughters who remember. Peace does not always shout. It sits quietly beside you. That semester, Brenda's grades improved. She laughed without forcing it. She ate well and slept well. Sometimes we passed the graveyard and she would stop to straighten a flower or brush off dust from a stone. She never rushed there. She walked slowly, like someone entering a holy place. Lillian visited again. She brought their mother's scarf and tied it on a tree near Mira's marker. She said her family finally had a place to grieve properly, a place to pray and say goodbye. We hugged, and for once, our tears were soft and sweet, not heavy with fear. At night, when I turned off the lights, our room felt safe. I realized that fear had been driven out by love. Love for a stranger, love for a name that almost disappeared. Weeks later, a school notice surprised us. The local council had heard about the students restoring the old graveyard. They offered small funds to support the care. They asked for volunteers and gave the gatekeeper a helper. Brenda was invited to speak at the community hall. She stood on the stage wearing a simple dress, no heavy makeup, no loud jokes. She told the truth again and gave credit to the chaplain, the gatekeeper, our friends, and to Mira's family. The hall clapped kindly. Afterward, an elderly woman walked up and pressed a small Bible into Brenda's hands. "For your new boldness," she said, "keep it for the living, not for noise." We walked home under a quiet sky. Brenda smiled at me. "I used to use my courage to do foolish things," she said. "Now I want to use it to do kind things." Brenda wrote a letter to the girls in our hostel, especially the younger ones who admired her old boldness. She wrote, "Courage without wisdom is a knife without a handle. It cuts the one who holds it. Respect places of rest. Speak softly where others sleep. If you ever make a mistake, don't hide, repair it." We printed the letter and placed it on the hostel notice board. Some girls rolled their eyes, but many others thanked her. One evening, I found a first-year student leaving flowers at the graveyard. She said, "I never knew these places matter." I told her, "They do." That night, Brenda and I cooked rice in our small pot and shared with our friends. We laughed about small things, lectures, rain, and sleepers that always get lost. Peace sat with us at the table like an old friend. On the last day of the semester, we visited Mira's marker one more time. The candle had melted and stained the marble with a gentle wax line. The copper bracelets, now with Lillian's family, had a new cord. We placed fresh flowers and stood in silence. Brenda whispered, "Thank you, Mira. Your life still speaks." I added, "And your rest is safe with us." The wind moved through the grass like a soft song. No shadows, no cold hands, only quiet. As we walked away, Brenda held my arm. "I used to want to dare something," she said with a small smile. "Now I want to care for something." We laughed softly and headed back to the hostel, ready for exams, ready for life. If you're hearing our story today, take this with you. Respect the living, honor the dead, fix what you break, use your courage for kindness. Disrespect has consequences, whether toward the living or the dead. What we treat as a joke can open doors to pain. Brenda's stubborn pride brought fear, but her humility, apology, and acts of honor brought peace. True courage is not in daring foolishness, but in making things right, respecting others, and using boldness for kindness. In short, respect people, both living and departed. Pride destroys, humility repairs. Courage should build, not harm. What you break, you must fix. Even forgotten souls deserve honor. If this story touched you, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with others. Like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss more powerful stories like. Do you think Brenda's suffering came from guilt or from a real spirit? If you were in Brenda's shoes, would you have dared to enter that graveyard? What lesson did you personally take from Brenda's experience?